Good afternoon, folks. This is Lindell, Fistful of Java, and we're continuing our series on studios and studio equipment. As important as the equipment and software is, when you get into the professional realm, the retail outlet you buy your equipment from, and the manufacturer are as important as anything, in some cases more important than the actual equipment. Because at some point in time, you're going to need help with the product, or you're going to need service of some type or another. And so I, at one time, did have a fully functional recording studio, not just a project studio. I had a Mackie 1604 VLZ 16 channel mixer, 4 buses on a rack mount. I had an AT4062 mic. Both those are about $1,000 respectively, the mic and the mixer. I had several other $300 and $400 mics in there. So I had, roughly $5,000 in mics. I had a PC that I built specifically for the studio. I decided to upgrade from some of the smaller interfaces I was using, which was made by M-Audio, which I will give kudos to all day long, because I took those cards and interfaces out of the machine, stored them on the shelf. 2-3 years later, I came back to them, plugged them in, updated the drivers for the new version of Windows. They worked just fine every time. Every time, every time, every time. But in my attempt to upgrade to a higher quality of studio, I bought what was called a Motu 2408. And what it was a single rack mount piece of equipment that was supposed to be like the Swiss Army knife of interfaces. It had 8 quarter-inch ins, 8 quarter-inch outs. It had ports for 3 Tascam machines, had ports for ADATs, had optical. It had monitor outs for the speakers. It was the hub of the entire studio, and everything plugged into it. And in the beginning, it was an outstanding piece of equipment. Again, as with most things in the professional realm, it was about $1,000. But about 8-9 months into it, it just stopped. The way the hardware was set up, there was a PCI card in the computer, and it had 3 FireWire ports in the back, so that the interfaces on the rack mount plugged into the card in the computer, and that's how you connected one to the other. And it was seamless in the beginning. But the card failed. So thus started a long and painful customer service relationship with Motu, which stands for Mark of the Unicorn, MOTU. Start off with, they said that, it was a compatibility issue with the card, that the motherboard needed to have a Intel chipset. This is different from the actual processor. It's a little mini component on the motherboard that supposedly allows the 2 pieces of hardware to interact. Well, the motherboard I had didn't have an Intel chipset. It didn't have one when I first got it, and it worked just fine for nearly a year. And I'm like, well, where was this piece of information? I don't remember reading anything about that. And I did find it in the paperwork, buried way deep in there, and it's one of those for best results. Use a computer that has an Intel chipset. Well, mine worked right off the bat. It was an AMD processor on it, but didn't have the Intel chipset on the motherboard. So I go back and forth with these guys going, okay, I don't understand how a piece of hardware that worked for all these months, never had a problem with the chipset, all of a sudden just now has a problem with the machine it's linked to. They don't want to hear that. So I, who had built the PC, decided to upgrade my PC. So I went shopping around trying to find a motherboard that had an Intel chipset. Now I was running AMD processors on the on that machine, and I liked AMD because it worked better, seemed to work better for me for multimedia type tasks, video, gaming, that kind of thing. And that was a lot of what I was doing was multimedia type stuff in my studio. So I had to shop around and make sure that the chipset, not just the, not the processor, the chipset was Intel. So it took forever because a lot of them didn't have that, and because no one cared. So I found a motherboard that worked. It was kind of pricey. I went ahead and made the switch to completely to Intel processor. I had to switch the RAM because it didn't fit in the new motherboard. So it was about a $800 upgrade because I had a new video card too. Just had to. So I upgraded the box, rebuilt it, new chipset, put everything back in. Everything worked fine except for their card. Still didn't work. Okay, so now excuse number one. Yeah, the chipset, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah, I've just rebuilt the machine with a brand new motherboard. I got plenty of RAM on here. I said, it's not the chipset. What else you got? Well, finally they admitted the fact that there were some manufacturing woes in building these cards. But I could tell when I saw the card, it didn't look like it was well put together. They found some cheap supplier probably overseas somewhere and bought the cheapest crap they can get their hands on to get this product out the door. Because this was like, I think, their first generation of products, and they were billed as a B-I-L-L-E-D, quite well in the magazines. You thought, oh yes, it's great, it's got all this stuff built into it, the interface works great, you guys will love it, for 8 to 9 months before abject failure. So, the story continues. Eventually, they did send me a new card. Plugged it in, worked just fine. For about I think maybe I might have gotten about 3 months out of it before it failed. And I'm like, I don't understand this, man. It's like, I'm in the same spot I was, a few months back. It's not working, and the gear on the rack was working. It's fine. It's been sitting stationary. It's dust free. There's no shock happening to it. I'm not unplugging and plugging stuff in. It stays put. The machine's not moving anywhere. I'm not carrying the stuff mobily, so there's no shock in any of this. It's just, cards aren't well made. And I said, I'm down. My studio is down because my interface to make everything work, the center of this universe is dead. And even with all that, because it worked so well, I was willing to try to work something out. But the thing that really threw me is I said, man, tell you what, I'll give you a credit card. I'll just buy another card interface to plug in here. Can we do that so I can get back up and running? And this is where me and Motu became enemies. The guy told me, in his own way, that who do you think you are? You just can't come in here and buy anything you want. We can't sell you a card. I'm like, the shock of what he just said was like, I can't buy anything I want. Aren't you guys in business to sell stuff? I mean, isn't that the whole purpose of this? I mean, I didn't even understand the statement he made. It was so stupid that it, and even now, it's been 20 years almost, I'm still dumbfounded by that statement that I can't buy anything I want. I'm just trying to get your stuff that I've already spent $1,000 on to work the way it's supposed to work, the way it used to work. And I'm willing to spend more money on the crappy little card you guys are having built so I can get back to work. Then at that point, my emails got to be stupid. I was flaming, folks. Man, it was like Street Fighter. No, you didn't. you know, it got crazy. And I didn't mince words for those people. And interestingly enough, they came back at me the same way I came at them. They threw out their ugly, it got personal. Being one particular guy, we went back and forth for weeks, exchanging ugliness, you know. And what it came down to is I never got it fixed. They wouldn't let me buy a card. What they did as a company, they moved away from using those PCI cards that were used to FireWire interface to a USB, the next iteration of USB to get away from using those cards. And I knew the card was the problem. The whole time they were insulting me and telling me I didn't know what was going on. I built the PC. I knew what was in it. I knew how it worked before. I knew compatibility issues are instant. They don't wait around a year to figure out they're not going to work. Either it's going to work or it doesn't, and you know immediately. To all you would-be studio people building home studios, check out the manufacturer. Look at the reviews from people who use the stuff, especially the pro level gear. You want to partner yourself with people that will take care of you when you have problems, especially if you're spending a goodly sum of money for the product. That's my story of woe. Like I said, if you buy it from a retail outlet, make sure their service is top notch, that they'll take care of you if something is wrong. If you're buying pro gear, that's maybe one of the only times I suggest that, if you want to get the extended warranty to bypass having to deal with the manufacturer, there are some considerations there, especially on the expensive gear. Because you don't want to have to chunk out another full retail price for some of that stuff. So anyway, that's my rant for today. Hope you guys have a good weekend. This is Lindell from Fistful of Java.